Hello, heroes, and welcome to the Slava Heroyam podcast. I am your host, Travis Hightower. It's just me this time with the flag back up a little bit helter-skelter, but that's okay. Things are helter-skelter in the world, but we are still united, United States and Ukraine, and this is the show that brings you the individual stories of the individual heroes, which some of them become legends out of Russia's war on Ukraine and their deeds, like the Ghost of Kiev and Magyar, the Hungarian, the drone specialist. We are going to talk about two frontline soldiers today that fought for more than 6 months in the same position on the front line because they couldn't be rescued. They couldn't get any help. We're also going to, as always, honor some of the fallen civilians and innocents that have been taken down by Russia's terror attacks, including the human safari. If you don't know what the human safari is, that is where individual civilians are hunted by drones and border towns along the border. One of the heaviest hit and targeted is called Kherson, and we have a documentary that we always push every episode, Kherson Human Safari. I'm going to go ahead and push up the banner for that website and the Stop Human Safari QR code. Because today we're going to talk a little bit of something that has to do with human safari, and that is the town of Oleshky. I've mentioned it before, but it is a Bucha situation where people are being executed, but the Ukrainian townsfolk and population there is being used as human shields, targeted by Russians in an attempt to make Ukrainians look like they're doing the same thing that Russia is doing to Kherson. So it's a propaganda war and information war campaign, and real lives and real deaths are in the crossroads, but it's really just more human safari. So I encourage you to watch Human Safari, the documentary first, before you get into the second part of this episode. And this episode comes 2 weeks after talking with some founding members of Ed's Friends, a organization that helps different surgeons from all over the world, including the United States, be able to practice medicine in Ukraine with the latest technologies, which includes 3D printing, facial reconstruction. If you did not catch that episode, make sure you look at the previous episode on my Substack, YouTube, or Spotify are my three primary locations, but also my Facebook page when these go live, the author Travis Hightower. Now, life kind of got in the way the last 2 weeks. I did publish an article on the two gentlemen heroes that we're about to talk about. So I'm going to be opening a Buy Me a Coffee. And what a Buy Me a Coffee will do is help pay some of the overhead of keeping this Substack going. Just a little bit of change here and there will help a lot to pay for some of the services I use to distribute this among all of my different social medias. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Travis Hightower. I'm a former AWACS E3 guy, now turned defense contractor, teaching the customers of the intelligence community how to use certain types of software for their analysis. It's an intelligence community. They've got to do analysis on things. I teach them how to use it. But more than a defense contractor, I am a storyteller, and I want to bring the stories of heroism to you, my audience, because sometimes those personal stories are what resonate with us the most. If only we could imagine ourselves facing these same dangers to our neighbors, to our family and friends, the truth of the situation and why we should care about another nation becomes more potent. So that is my role as a storyteller. And today, unfortunately, I have to start again by sharing some of the stories of people that will never be able to have a voice again. But we remember them fondly, remember them as if they were our neighbors right across the street, because one day they very well could be. Several of these were lost or of human safari. One of them was Oksana. She's a teacher from the village of Yano. And I'm going to go back here. Teacher from Yano. And on June 4th, we lost her in a strike on town square in her village. So a lot of times Russians wait until the markets try to assemble and they shoot at the markets. The Ukrainians have like an alert system of when a bunch of missiles and drones are headed their way, and they all head underground, and it doesn't guarantee survival, and it doesn't guarantee people are going to make it all the way to the shelters. But this is the type of situation where it's a small drone. People are just they're within 60 miles of the front, but they're still trying to live their day-to-day lives. And drones hit the town square and killed this teacher. Similar situation with Oleg of Dnipro. It's another border town. 2 years old. He and his parents were killed in a missile strike. This is more of a ballistic missile strike. They didn't make it to a shelter for whatever reason. Their house was struck, and this little one was lost. And we've lost Irina Zabuduko, 8 June from Kyiv. You can't see all the text right there, but there were 9 people that died on 8 June in Kyiv. And some of these May and June strikes on Kyiv are some of the heaviest on civilians in the war. And what you've got to notice differences. Some of you have seen the memes going around of Moscow's oil fields being struck. That's an oil field, oil tanks exploding. These are hitting people's houses and apartment complexes in Kyiv. And so there's a huge difference in targeting going on that you should take note of. But Irina is transformed into the nightingale here, the bird of Ukraine. And Nadia, another human safari victim, 70 years old, her and her husband, just trying to live in her house in Kherson. And the drone flew into their house and exploded, killed both her and her husband. So Kherson human safari going on there. And sunflowers are another national symbol of Ukraine. Next week, we'll be doing an entire series on rescue workers. Here's 4. These rescue workers were on their way to rescue victims in Kyiv. And what the Russians do is they wait for rescue vehicles to arrive, and then they start attacking the rescue workers. So I believe these 4 were doing rescue operations at a manufacturing facility. And some of them had been there their whole lives, and they were struck with follow-on missiles designed to attack rescue workers. And that was very near Kyiv. So this monument here was also struck. This is a chapel in Kharkiv. And the Russians struck this monument, and it's essentially like when the Notre Dame chapel burned in France, except that was a accidental fire. Now you have Russians starting to attack some of these monuments as Putin gets more and more desperate, as the war gets more and more out of his hands. His targeting has increased now to include national monuments. Anything he can do to try to break the will of the Ukrainian people, which is unbreakable. And, at some point, that fact is what will win Ukraine the war. The only question is how many more innocents will be taken along the way as Putin becomes more and more desperate. That's up to us, the rest of the world. We can help end it in a matter of weeks, or we can keep going the way we're going and force Ukraine to win the war the way they're winning it. So on to our primary story. This is, let me make sure I'm sharing this. On to our primary story. This is these 2 gentlemen. They're both named Alexander. So I will be referring to them by their call signs as I talk about them. Alexander Tishlaev and Alexienko. I'm probably saying that one wrong. Here are some. They were defending the Zaporizhia region, and my article includes a lot of pictures of Zaporizhia then and where these fields looked like and what they kind of look like now under Russian attack, which is happening for no reason. This is kind of the bunkers and shelters that these two men would have been living in for 6 months, but they occupied essentially one position for 6 months. And we'll go back to them. It started in May, so the weather is relatively moderate. And as the summer grew on, it gets hotter and hotter. Now, it doesn't get as hot as it does here in Texas, but the humidity does go up, so it gets really muggy. And these guys are fighting off wave after wave of Russians, everything from motorcycles to soldiers, but they're essentially frontline scouts. They're way up there on the front, noticing the movements of Russian troops, radioing it back to the front, because what the Ukrainians have gotten really good at doing is keeping a bunch of forces in the back rather than all in the front of the trenches, getting information and intelligence on where the Russians are going to try to attack next, and then filling in the gaps as the Russians arrive, just as the Russians arrive to push them back. Most of the time, that wipes out, the enemy on the order of 20 to 1, 12 to 1 to 20 to 1, high casualty rate of attrition for the Russians. That is just unsustainable. But a couple times, the Russians have actually pushed in and made big pockets of advances, only to have those pockets be surrounded and cut off and pushed back. So that's kind of the way the war has been going for the last 2 years. And maybe pretty soon we can talk more closely to someone that developed an app to help watch the front. But this is the Ukrainian soldier is expected to spend about a month to 2 months at a time on the front. If Ukrainian commanders had their way, they would spend only. If Ukrainian commanders had their way, they would only spend 1 month for rotation. You have guys go up there and fight, then the rotation gets changed out, so you have fresh bodies fighting all along these trenches. And they keep building fortifications, not only at the very front, but fallback fortifications. So all these guys take turns building fortifications, getting rest, sometimes going all the way home to their cities, then coming back out to the front. So it's quite a rotational process that they can't always maintain. And so you're lucky if you get done with your stint in 2 months. But usually you start to run out of supplies at about the 3-month part, and you've got to rotate someone out that comes in with fresh supplies and fresh bodies. These guys hit a point in the war where Russia caught up with its drone technology just enough that it became impossible to withdraw. You couldn't get the Bradley tanks up there. You didn't have the robotic ambulances yet that they have now. Ukraine has since deployed those to the field, where soldiers get in these robotic armored vehicles, and they are withdrawn from the front that way. Bradleys are too easy to spot and destroy by drones anymore, especially the Bradleys that we've given them, which are old versions and break down very easily. I got a chance to talk to this gentleman whose book, he was a Bradley driver before he got wounded. Another whole podcast was about him and his 2 cyborg companions who have been fighting since 2014. But the long story short of it, can't withdraw. Got to keep fighting until the conditions are right that you can make a big transition. Either Russia stops putting on the pressure or the weather cooperates. In other words, bad weather equals change people out. And eventually that's what happened. You have the cool down in autumn, and there's a big long stretch of foggy days in October. And so from May to October, these guys got out of there, but not before. In late September, early October, just before they left, they had to fight an assault of about 12 armored vehicles, and they took out one of these guys, the Russian MTLB, by themselves. So Tishka is a grenadier. He has a grenade launcher, and Kuzin is, a machine gunner, rifleman. But they use Tishka's grenades, and they destroy one of these guys. It gets stuck. The Russians evacuate it, and Kuzin takes out three of the fleeing Russians. And for that and for their 6-month fight, they're awarded the Order of Merit. Something else you need to know about these guys: they didn't grow up warriors. The man on the left, Tishka, is essentially a factory worker, blue collar guy, and the man on the right is a little bit older. He's in his 40s. Kuzin, the Grenadier, is essentially a janitor at an elementary school, and that was their peacetime jobs. And now they're warriors and heroes because that is what Russia forced them to be. Fighting for more than 6 months, even at the very end of their fight, when Russia thinks everyone's exhausted and tired, sends the heaviest artillery barrage and heaviest mechanized force to try to attack the Zaporizhzhia front. And these guys hold firm along with all their other comrades along the front. And they succeed in holding the line. And sometimes all you got to do to win the war is hold the line long enough. And our job is to stop asking them to hold the line, but to give them enough to go on the offensive and end this thing once and for all. Every podcast, before we talk about our humanitarian organization of the week, which every podcast I have a humanitarian organization to talk to, we are going to view and react to a few videos recorded for what will be another documentary by Zarina Zabriskie. This time, she is interviewing people that have escaped from Oleshky. The town that I told you at the beginning of this podcast is being used as a human shield by Russians near Kherson. So let's hear from some of the people, some of the survivors.
Тисячі людей, особливо дітей, живуть в пеклі. Я кажу зараз про Олешки і про території, які наближені до Олешок, де розкидані трупи загиблих військових, цивільних, які не можна просто забрати і не можна евакуювати цивільне населення. Особливо дітей, тому що ви наражаєтесь кожної хвилини на небезпеку бути вбитим або російським дроном, який не дозволяє людям збиратися. Як от там 2 тижні тому просто декілька людей зібралися, і росіяни цих людей просто повбивали, поранили. І ці люди поранені лежать сьогодні без належної медичної допомоги, бо їх не можна врятувати. Не можна, тому що росіяни не дають можливості навіть вивести поранених людей за межі цього населеного пункту і інших поблизу лінії розмежування. Це все окуповані території. І всілякі намагання України, президента Зеленської, влади достукатися до Росії через посередників, через напряму, дайте можливість врятувати цивільних, вони нічим не закінчуються. Це геноцид. Ми говоримо про тисячі людей, яких Росія використовує як просто прикриття для своїх злочинних дій, для воєнних злочинів. І це є злочини проти людяності, коли цивільні особи використовуються в якості просто прикриття для оборони Росії, для російських військових. Я хочу звернутися сьогодні до тих, від кого залежить прийняття цих рішень, до всього світу сьогодні, щоб весь світ почув, що сьогодні Росія не тільки має намір вбити там всіх українців в самій Україні на контрольованих територіях, але в окупованих територіях чиниться геноцид, де використовуються цивільні особи задля прикриття військових. Врятуйте Олешки, врятуйте дітей, які залишаються в Олешках, людей старшого віку, люди, які взяті просто на смерть. І нам потрібно, щоб весь світ це почув. І ми просимо сьогодні і Сполучені Штати, і країни Європи, Канаду, весь цивілізований світ, будь ласка, відреагуйте на це. Без вашої допомоги це неможливо буде зробити. Тому що Путіну, в принципі, все одно на смерті людей. Тисячі людей, особливо дітей, живуть в пеклі. Я кажу зараз про Олешки і про території, які наближені до Олешок, де розкидані трупи загиблих військових, цивільних, які не можуть.
So there's video number one. The gentleman in the West is imploring us in the West to do something about a genocide. And we've been very bad about doing things about genocide. But this should be cut and dry. And what Russia has learned is if you make it seem like there's two sides to this story, that people might hesitate. It makes people hesitate even more than nuclear weapons. But this is a hostage situation. And the only way it ends is with Russia's defeat. Now, you could take back a lot of these zones just east of the river Dnipro and drive the Russians back, and then the human safari would have to move back further with them. They're not going to stop, but you can at least save some of these towns. And how do you save some of these towns? You make a no-fly corridor over them. They're mining the sky, so the no-fly zones of the future are going to have to include what to do about drones. And if drones are flying, then that's free reign for, and you're inviting an attack from those enforcing the no-fly zone. What I'm saying is that we, the West, do need to be prepared to go to war. But if you take a tough enough stance, a united enough stance, it won't come to that, because Russia will back down because they're cowards. Only cowards use people as human shields. And you need to understand that when it's a situation where Russia isn't dug into caves like Afghanistan, where you're never going to find them. These Russians are out in the open. You close the sky above them, Ukraine goes on the offensive and pushes them all the way home. Because from 2022 to 2023, that's exactly what Ukraine did. All they needed to do in those years was out-artillery the Russians. But at some point, you had to win the air war, and that's where things stalled. Where things have started moving again in the Kherson and Zaporizhzhia region are because Skylink got shut down, or at least got secured away from the Russians. And that has caused Russia to lose a lot of ground in Zaporizhzhia, where our two heroes that we mentioned today just fought. So every little thing can help. But Oleshky itself needs to be relieved. There needs to be a huge evacuation and rescue operation. And it's going to take awareness from the entire international community to make that happen. Some of these people that have gotten out are because of local efforts and efforts of the Ukrainian government. But when you're facing a genocide, now there is no way that Russia can say it's not the aggressor. And without it, if no one buys into the BS that oh, we had to attack, if no one buys into their propaganda BS, that's the only place they're winning right now. If no one buys into that, Oleshky is saved very easily by the united might of NATO. So you've got to share this podcast and share the word about what's going on. Make it common knowledge. That's your task for you, my listeners. Let's listen to two more of these.
Світла немає, води немає, газу немає, продуктів немає, зв'язку теж немає. Інтернет, якщо є десь по підвалам у когось, то це дуже велика рідкість. Зв'язок теж дуже поганий. Допомоги ніякої не можуть лікарня показати людям, тому що не завозиться бензин. Лікарня працює на генераторах. Трупи лежать одне на одному, там їх по 30, по 40. Ніхто нічого не вивозить. Якщо і вивозять, то не повертають їх назад. Розумію, що їх не ховають, а десь вони спалюються, або десь викидаються ці трупи. З тих, що залишалися люди в Олешек, то що половини немає, це точно, ті, що не виїхали. А їх тільки знайомих, я вам можу сказати тільки скільки вбила. Оце мати, у родственниці дочка, сусід один, сусід другий, потім знайомий постраждав. Ці сусіди наші двоє згоріли, ще двоє згоріли. Еще одна соседка ногу оторвала, тоже истекла кровью. Це десяток тільки тих, що моїх знайомих, близьких. 2 чоловіка – це просто мінімум кожен день погибає. Якщо на трасі вони залишаються, де на мінах підірвалися, або якщо машина там горіла, де були якісь аварії, то там залишаються тіла, і їх кацапи не дають вивозити. Вони по пару неділь валяються по місту, це точно. Собаки розтягуються, вони стадами бігають, шукають їжу. Їдять собаки, трупи їдять, звісно їдять, бо вони голодні. Дрони літають постійно над всіми, везде, і за всіми всі смотрять. Плюють за людьми, можуть скинути на тебе в будь-яку секунду, в будь-яку годину. Можуть заарештувати теж саме в будь-яку секунду, за будь-яку годину, за будь-який повод. З самого початку вимушають людей брати паспорти російські. Ти там не людина, якщо в тебе нема паспорта. Ті, що без паспортів ховаються і взагалі не виходять на вулицю. Вся траса замінована. Вони літають і дивляться за всіми. Це і катастрофа, і геноцид.
We'll keep going and watch another one. That was a woman who didn't want to show her face, she's still in Oleshky, and served a meal to Zarina. And it's the same report here that, they don't care if the bodies are recovered. They don't want the bodies recovered. They want people afraid. They want them to know they face a genocide. So this is how they're trying to break the will of the people. Eventually, there'll be no people left. And that, the realities of war is the Ukrainian front line can't get to them like they could in Bucha. So what are we going to do about it? Well, hopefully you're going to spread the word.
Херсон – це місто, яке знаходиться на півдні материкової частини України, має вихід до морів, до Чорного, до Азовського, до озера Сиваш. Це було найкрасивіше місто по географічному розташуванню нашої країни, але на сьогоднішній день це місто, яке найбільше страждає від збройної агресії. Місто Олешки розташовані від Херсона на відстані 1500 метрів. Це було найближче місто до Херсону. Воно знаходилось за Антонівським мостом. Це символ Херсонщини, який був зруйнований. І це дало можливість декупувати правобережжя нашої Херсонщини. Тому це місто, яке ми бачимо очами, але не можемо допомогти людям фізично. Місто Олешки – це взагалі унікальне місто, тому що воно одне з найбільших постраждало після підриву Каховської ГЕС, коли повністю було затоплено і дуже багато людей не мали можливості спастися навіть на дахах своїх будинків. Друге, зараз, коли росіяни не випускають людей, використовуючи їх як живий щит, ховаючись за ними, для того, щоб Збройні сили не могли працювати і не могли тягнутися до цих нелюдів, які вбивають наших людей. На Олешках і Херсоні ви можете побачити сафарі на людей. І сафарі – це не як мисливий з рушницею, це дрони, які ганяються просто за людьми зі швидкістю більше 150 км на годину. Тобто вижити в цьому квесті немає нікого можливості. Те ж саме стосується міста Олешок, коли люди не мають ні житла, все розбите, не мають води, не мають їжі, і просто люди виживають. Люди просто фізично не мають їжі. Їдять і п'ють і те, що потрапляється на очі, воду збирають дощову. Тому для розуміння ситуації, яка твориться в цих двох містах, а вони взаємопов'язані, то на сьогоднішній день я навіть не знаю, з чим його порівняти. Це з блокадою якихось міст у Другої світової війни. Взагалі я сам з Донецька. З 2014 року я зустрів війну, яка почалась в нашій країні в Донецьку. В зв'язку з цим був вимушений виїхати. І з 2019 року я працював на Херсонщині, тому Херсонщина для мене другий дім і друга історія переселення, яку я переживаю разом зі своєю родиною, спочатку з Донецьку, потім з Херсону. Зараз працюю в Києві і стараюсь максимально широко висвітлювати ті події, які зараз відбуваються в Херсоні, тому що на сьогоднішній день ми бачимо такого геноциду і просто сафарі за людьми немає і не бачив світ. Херсон – це...
So, that's a politician from Kherson. We got one more of these to listen to, but I want to say a thought as I listen to him that, one of the big things that kind of comes across in propaganda is that the people of Eastern Ukraine want to be part of Russia. People in the Donbass and Donetsk and Luhansk. And what you have to realize about the people who have stayed is that's their home. And they do very much care about who they end up with. They've told me before that separatist is a dirty word. I've met people from Donetsk. And without getting too much into that, I want you to think about if they need to do this genocide, if they need to attack people with drones in what is essentially very close to, if not Eastern Ukraine. Kherson and the Dnieper River, on the east side of it, you're essentially entering that Eastern Ukraine zone that you're talking about politically. If those people are begging for help, they can't flee west. The Russians would love it if they fled east. They could leave if they decided to go to Russia and become Russian. Most likely. Oleshky, maybe not. Maybe they really want those human shields. But a lot of the children that get kidnapped and can't return to Ukraine, their only choice is to go east to Russia. And Russia loves that because it makes it look like it legitimizes their invasion. But these people are sticking it out and not doing it either, particularly in Kherson. If you have a passport, you might be able to. You could probably leave and go east. They probably won't let you go west, as that woman was saying. If you don't have a passport, you're less than human. And they're not exactly checking passports very much. So let's listen to one more that Zarina has up here.
В Олешкі з 26 травня не доставлялось ніякого палива, не газових балончиків. З 26 травня не може виїхати, не заїхати ні одна машина, в тому числі і карета швидкої допомоги. Закінчується їжа, закінчується паливо, осталось на декілька днів. Лікарня працює на генераторах. В лікарні лежить біля 60 людей на лікуванні в стаціонарі. 5 чоловік важко поранених. Швидка не може вивезти їх до Скадовську. Вони там просто тихо вмирають. І поранених кожен день додається. Мені пишуть, маму відвезли в лікарні на тачці. Мого тата відвезли на тачці в лікарню. Підірвало ногу. Наша лікарня не може проводити таких важких операцій, як ампутація ноги. Це треба їхати в Скадовськ. Російська влада несе відповідальність, але люди як живий щит. Заміновані всі під'їзди, 3 дороги до Олешок. Вони не дають можливості навіть виїхати, навіть на ті самі окуповані території, але в більш тихі місця, такі як Скадовськ, Генічеськ. Люди записуються з дітьми. Люди навіть не можуть вийти пішки, бо міни там лежать протипіхотні. 2 червня був такий випадок, що 3 водія залишили свої машини, пішли трошки пішки, щоб побачити, що там є на дорозі, і близько 4-5 метрів від тих мін вони почали вибухати. Один водій дуже сильно обгорів, його не довезли до лікарні. Один водій досі в комі в лікарні, і третій водій, в нього пробити сечовий міхур, теж треба транспортувати до Скадовська. Але такої змоги нема. Треба розголос, треба розмінувати одну дорогу, щоб хоча б виїхала швидка з тими пораненими, які там є з 2 червня. В Олешкі з 26 травня не достатньо.
They're turning this place into a death trap. Again, as Russia becomes more and more desperate, they'll become more and more cowardly. And that's something that I don't know if I can get across enough. That this period of time where Russia is losing and knows it's going to lose is going to be one of the most dangerous for Ukrainians. And we cannot rely on our current executive administration to do anything about it. It's going to have to be Congress. It's going to have to be you, the loud voices. And it's going to have to be with our own personal charity. So that brings us to our charity of the week, which is one that I started out with on this channel, talking to my friend Ben Cook and his associate Michael Scolari, who run the Ukrainian Assistance Organization. They are making a difference. They are not always able to get into areas like Kherson, and definitely not Oleshky. But when people make it out of there, this organization can help. And they can help all along in all the different cities where bombs are falling every day. They're based out of American organization combined with Ukrainians. Very diverse organization of nursing experts and humanitarian aid experts. It is something you can donate to and feel good about. They're an accredited 501(c), even $5. You think about how expensive medications are here, not quite as expensive for the basic medications there. $5 can buy a month of medications or a full box of wound dressings. So I encourage you to go to Give UAO. They are my charity of the week. Call your congressman, especially your Republican congressman who don't even vote for things like the Ukrainian Support Act, which was just asking for a loan. Ukraine's asking for a loan from the United States, no gift money, but a loan to finish this war, to rebuild, to help get people out of places like Oleshky. And it was barely passed in the House. So you've got to start letting your friends know that they need to contact their congressman and let them know what's going on in Ukraine. Just say, hey, you know what's going on in Ukraine? You think we can help out a little bit since we spent all this money on some other country and it didn't get us anywhere? I don't know. There's a lot of different points you can make. You can try, but we all have to try together. And just remember, you're not the guy that used to be a janitor at a school that had to be sitting on the front line for 6 months, ready to blow up a tank with your grenade launcher. You're probably a teacher, a construction worker, and you're still working those jobs, working hard for your family. So $5 of medical aid to the Ukrainian Assistance Organization. Here it is again, if you didn't see it. GiveUAO.org. GiveUAO.org. I believe I have a banner for that. There they are. And so we'll close with that, and we'll say Slava Ukraini. Glory to all those who support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And Heroyam Slava. We'll see you next time, where we'll talk about some of the heroes and medical workers that have made a difference in Ukraine. Thank you.